Hi, friends. I'm Rob Tigan.
And I'm Joanna, and this is the Growing Home Together podcast.
We're caring for the soul of your family, helping you grow closer to God
and each other.
Thank you for joining us today on the Growing Home Together podcast. 3.5 years ago, Joanna and I turned our lives upside down by stepping away from my traditional day job and Joanna's career as a stay-at-home parent to start our full-time partnership in writing and ministry. So even though we have had many, many years of teamwork as parents, volunteer work, and just in life as a married couple, working together has taken our need for partnership to a whole nother level.
Yeah, it sure has. And, I remember in the beginning that so many people would hear about what we were doing and they would say, oh, I could never stay home all day to work with my spouse. How do you do it? And honestly, there were no simple answers to that question. Every couple has to wrestle with the challenges of teamwork, no matter what their unique situation might be. So that is why we are so excited to welcome Robert and Kay Lee Fukui to the show today. Robert and Kay Lee bring years of successful and award-winning business experience to the table, and together they have developed an innovative consulting program called Power Couples by Design, which equips couples to build a thriving marriage and a prosperous business side by side. Robert and Kay Lee are experts in helping couples grow in their teamwork to accomplish their dreams and goals and to have a thriving relationship. So thank you, Robert and Kay Lee, for joining us today.
Oh, pleasure. We're so glad to be on, and
it's an honor.
It's great to get to know you better.
Yeah, well, thank you. From getting to know you guys over these last months, I can say that your journey of marriage and business has been pretty exciting. Could you help tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you became not just marriage partners, but business partners as well?
Well, definitely we come from opposite sides. I come from an island. I was born in Hawaii, and she was born on a ranch here in California.
Yeah,
Okay.
entrepreneur family.
So there's a long journey to how we got to meet.
Sure.
My dad's a pastor. Her parents are entrepreneurs, and grandparents are entrepreneurs. But essentially, kind of how we met was actually in the modern era of dating. We met online, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Yeah. And I caught her with a picture. So my
Mr. Marketing.
My background's in marketing, so it's all about attracting your target audience. So I didn't realize, but I was skiing in Switzerland many years ago, and I was on the top of the gondola, on the top of the top of the lift, and it was right on the border where Zermatt is, where the Matterhorn is. It's on the border of Italy and Switzerland.
Okay.
So at the top of this lift was the border of Italy and Switzerland. So there's a line demarcation of Italy and Switzerland. And then, so I had a friend of mine take a picture of me. Off my back right shoulder was the Matterhorn. So that was my profile picture for my online dating site, whatever profile.
Okay.
Well, Kaylee's Swiss.
Oh, no way.
So that picture caught her attention, and she clicked on my profile.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And it was off and running.
Yeah, it's a little marketing tip.
Okay.
Just a quick side note. I was thinking about this the other day because Joanna is a big dog lover, and I love Joanna, so I tolerate our dogs. And now I've learned to love them more over the years, but she's a big dog lover, and I thought if we would have met each other during today online dating, she probably would have had a tagline, "Must love dogs," and I thought we probably would have never met each other. But go on. Sorry, that's just unnecessary side note.
Exactly. No, that's good. So that was our first, how we met initially, but it actually took about 3 weeks before she actually responded to me. So I think initially what I did was, memories coming back, because this is 16, 17 years ago, but I had seen her profile and I messaged her, but I didn't hear back for about 3 weeks. And she finally, and you can tell the story, honey, she finally responded to me 3 weeks later. And after she saw my picture, and responded 3 weeks later.
Because all my girlfriends in my Bible study group, they were all doing online. I was the last one to do it. And so they were helping me with my profile and all that. And so they said, oh, just go on certain days. They'll give you free days every so often. So I would go on the free days. And it had been 3 weeks since you had initially
Yeah, so
emailed me,
yeah,
then
so
I
when
responded back.
when she responded, I'm like, who is this? So, but then we initially, traded a couple of emails, and then talked on the phone, and then about a week later, we met in person, had dinner, um, and and this is can I tell the story, honey? I always
Yeah,
tell
go
it anyway.
ahead. I know you're gonna
But
tell it whether I say yes or
our
not.
first date story kind of gives you and gave me a snapshot of what I was in for. All right, so we had a nice dinner, and it was dinner on the pier. The restaurant was on the pier in Ventura. After dinner, we walked around the pier. Then I walked her to her car, and I said, I really had a good time. And she responded, I did too. So I asked her, so you want to do this again? And she responded, yeah, okay. so, so it wasn't the enthusiastic response I wanted, but here's a communication tip, right? So there's, I spent 25 years in marketing and sales. And so I thought, well, she didn't say no. It wasn't quite the reaction or the emphasis or energy or emotion I wanted, but she didn't say no. So to clarify, because I didn't want to drive an hour home to Pasadena and think, what does she mean? Did she say yeah because she meant it, or yeah just because she didn't want to hurt my feelings? So I decided to clarify at the moment and said, well, I'll be back in town on Wednesday, so do you want to meet up?
Yeah, well, you weren't gonna let me off the hook that easily.
Well, I wanted to know either way, right? So based on that response, then I know either way if she's really, into this or not. So she did.
Well, I wanted to check out all my options. You never know. And I wanted to see what you're made out of.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So
most guys would just say, "Oh, forget it, moving on," and not think
Exactly.
twice about
It might have been between free days, and there might have been other people waiting there, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
I might have had to wash my
Wash
hair.
my hair. Yeah, exactly. So she did say yes. So the rest, from there it got easier. But definitely, I definitely had learned I had to really clarify things, and because you never know what's on her mind. But anyways, that's kind of how we met on our first date and our second date. But yeah, so that was our journey of just meeting, and then we've been married for going on 15 years here next month, and actually after a month after our first date, actually, Kay Lee suggested lovingly that I go see a counselor.
Okay.
You know, telling this story.
So now I'm thinking, I don't know what you'd be thinking at this point, but I'm thinking, are we even dating? Are we a thing? Are we exclusive? I just barely met her.
Right.
I don't really know her much, but next thing you know, she's suggesting I go to counseling. So the backstory is, honey.
So Robert was previously married, and he to his grade school sweetheart, and had lost her in a car accident. She had passed away like a year and a half before I met him, and I knew that he would always love her, but I just wanted to make sure he had room in his heart for me, because my girlfriend said, "Oh, well, that's great. There's no ex-wife," but I didn't want to feel like I was competing with the ghost, and that I had got into so deep with him because I liked him that I got my heart broken when I found out, if I was to find out he didn't have room for me.
Yeah. So that's after she gave me the reason, then I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So long story short, it turned into 2 years of relationship counseling, because I would go to counseling session, and it was actually one of her counselor too. But after session, then I would go pick her up for dinner, because I was in town. It was her counselor is where she lived, which is an hour away from my house. So I would time it so it's at the end of the day of work, and then I would pick her up for dinner. And then she would always ask me, "So how'd it go?" So I'm thinking, I just went through an hour of session. I don't want to have to relive it by retelling it, right? So I suggested after 2 sessions, I said, "Why don't you just come with me, and then you get your questions answered like firsthand."
Yeah.
and I don't have to play this telegram thing. And so at first she's like, no, this is your session. But then after a couple more or maybe one more session, then she said, okay. So anyways, that turned into 2 years of counseling, of just relationship counseling, all the way to the day we got married 2 years later. So that's the backstory that kind of helps you understand why we're doing what we're doing now.
Sure.
This all kind of started.
How you got into this?
Yeah, this all kind of started with, really learning how to do relationship, how to communicate, how to resolve conflict. So we dealt with all the issues that a lot of couples deal with now in their marriage. When you get married, that's when you start dealing with it. And
Because we didn't have those tools growing up in our families.
Yeah, and then my dad was a pastor, and they didn't do conflict well.
And my family doesn't do conflict either. So.
And so it really, we took care of all the big issues, and really our counselor helped us develop tools that we can use lifelong to be able to talk about anything, even the touchy subjects, but not trigger each other. But
not intentionally,
but at least if you do trigger each other unintentionally, you know how to get over it and then have a good productive conversation that resolves things, and not just that things get swept under the rug. So, our first year of marriage, I mean, we had our first year anniversary, and I'm thinking, well, that was easy. I was like, because we had dealt with all the big issues that people would normally deal with it that first year, like, toilet paper over and under, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But family issues, holiday issues, just the way we handle money. I mean, all those things we dealt with before we even got married. But even just as important, or more importantly, we just had tools to be able to deal with the things that did come up when we got married.
Right, because you don't necessarily overcome it. You just have tools, and you've become better equipped with how to deal with things.
Yeah, so I was kicking and screaming going into counseling when she suggested that. When she first suggested it, but obviously looking back, thinking, oh my God, it would have been a struggle because we are so different. We're so different.
Right. Right. Well, I love the intentionality that you're describing from the get-go, and that's really motivating. That the payoff is really real. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that was all her. That's all Kay Lee, because otherwise it wouldn't have been my idea to go to counseling.
Yeah.
Sure.
So you started kind of thinking, what does she think of me if she's asking me to go to counseling? But then obviously through that, you saw the wisdom that she was offering you through that process too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So then how far do we have to fast forward before your marriage relationship became a business partnership?
So about 8 years in our marriage, I think I started, got to kind of like in my 40s. And so I'm thinking, what do I want to do for the rest of my life professionally? Here I was in marketing sales for a major pharmaceutical company. My dad always just taught me, go to school, get a degree, stay out of debt, and just get a good job. So, having a business was not on my radar, but she always thought I could do a business, but I didn't think so, just because that's not how I was raised. But I did start toying with the idea, as I'm hitting, mid 40s, thinking, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? And should it be a business? If so, what? And since I didn't know really what kind of business it was, I thought, well, maybe let me just do some market consulting for family small business. And maybe I'll find a business through that process, as I'm helping different business. Well, it turns out I really loved the consulting. And so I just started to think, well, let's just do this. This will be my next step. So started developing the business on the side to eventually, hopefully, leave my corporate job and to do the consulting business full time. And when I started it, Kay Lee asked, hey, can I help? And I was like, Joanna, as you were saying earlier, I'm thinking, no. What other people think, what other couples think is like, no way, I can't work with my spouse. I mean, that's just the express way to divorce. And so I said, I don't think that's a good idea. And, but she just kept, every once in a while, she just keep asking and asking. And so finally I said, okay, well, maybe do this or do that. So eventually it morphed into her, working with me. And then, when I left my corporate job, then we ended up kind of working full time. And that kind of got almost like by happenstance, the week before my last day at my company, I got a call from somebody in Aruba who has the largest tourist company there. And she was making a run for a political office. And she asked if I could help her with a marketing campaign. And so that meeting was going to be over Thanksgiving week. So she said, I'll fly Kay Lee out too and all that stuff. So we're just like, hey, I'm not going to turn down a trip to Aruba. So, being the good husband though, because I was at the dining room table, Kay Lee was in the kitchen. I'm on the phone. I said, well, I don't want to assume that I know the answer for Kay Lee, but let me ask real quick. So I said, honey, do you want to go to Aruba? But it's going to be over Thanksgiving week. She says, okay. I said, all right, we're in. So, and then right after that, we got invited to Honduras, back-to-back trip. It was like one big trip together to do some entrepreneurship training. So really right off the gate, we started traveling together and working together. And if it wasn't for, all the help we got in counseling, it definitely would have been a struggle. But I think, like a lot of couples, the reasons why you don't think you can work together is because the conflict that maybe you already have, and working together would just multiply that factor. But for us, as long as you know how to resolve conflict, you can work together.
Mhm.
And if you appreciate each other's differences and kind of work in your strengths, then you'll find a good working relationship, and develop a team, real team strategies. But too many times, even as the entrepreneur couples that we help, sometimes the one spouse that is working, if they happen to both be working in business, one spouse is not working in their sweet spot. They're just doing it out of duty and obligation, and maybe because they don't want to pay somebody to actually fill that position, so they bring the spouse in. So that creates an unhealthy relationship. So if you're going to work together, number one is definitely know your lane, know your strengths, and work within your strengths, and work really well as a team. And then just really develop tools to be able to resolve issues, because whether at home or in your business, there's going to be things where there's disagreements. But a lot of times what we found is that your end goals are typically the same. You just come at it with different viewpoints and a different way of thinking how you're going to get there. So, but if you know how to really resolve issues and be able to talk through it, you can work well as a team.
And I
Yeah.
think sometimes that can be a mindset, because you're pretty detailed, and sometimes that would really get kind of scratchy, irritating me. But then I thought, you know what, I got to relook at this, because you come in handy now, honey. Like if I need something that's super detailed, I'm like, oh, honey, can you take a look at this? So it comes out handy and great for me now.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well,
Before it used to bug me, but I'm like, okay, we got to like rethink
Now she
this.
puts you to work.
yeah. No, I love that, because I think you see that even at the beginning, how Kay Lee saw something in you that you didn't even see in yourself. She saw you as a businessman and an entrepreneur before you did, and I think that's an important thing. That's something that Joanna and I have really learned in this process the last few years for us too, is that we are very different people, and we knew that. I love to dream. I love the creative process. I'm very much into networking and goal setting. Joanna is very detail oriented, very concrete thinker, and a lot of times that can create conflict. I mean, Joanna loves to stick to a task, and I like to get out of my desk every 15 minutes with a new idea that I'm telling her while she's trying to get her task done, and so I guess my question for you guys is, how did you learn to make those differences work for you instead of against you?
Well, like I said, it's just really defining our roles, number one. And there's going to be times where, kind of like you, Rob, Kay Lee is more the dreamer and thinker. I mean, I do too, but just in a different level. But she'll dream, think, and throw something at me. But I got to make it work.
And I could come up with 100 ideas in like 2 seconds. So
yes,
so I think it's,
and they're all good. They're all great.
So it's staying in your lanes, but also knowing those times to come together and talk and dream, and then knowing when is a moment for Kay Lee to talk about those dreams. And then so that's why we set up weekly meetings specifically for just, okay, let's get everything on the table, and then figure out when are we going to talk further about certain issues. So a lot of times what happens that drives couples nuts when you're working together is because it's usually they're usually pretty opposite. So one person has to really sit and think and process and all that, and the other person's going to be just go, and the person that's go is going to come in and interrupt someone's the spouse's train of thought or their work process and all that. And that's when you start to get conflict, because they say, not now, I'm busy, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then what happens is things don't get talked about, because all you're saying is, I'm busy, let's talk about it later. So what we come together is, okay, we have scheduled times when we discuss certain issues, but in the midst of that week, if there's something that either one of us comes to each other on, if now's not a good time, you just tell me when is, and what time, what day and time are we going to talk about it. So a lot of it is making sure there's intentional time to talk about things or deal with things when it's not opportune for one spouse or the other at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times that's where some power struggle comes in, and working together is, dealing with things at the moment, and sometimes can be dealt with now, or sometimes things can't, but you have to be able to communicate that but then have some dates and times in which you're going to discuss and resolve certain issues.
Because I'm like you, Rob, like every 15 minutes, I think I need to get up or move around or whatever. And so I had to really, really work and be intentional about when Robert's working to not be interrupting him, because I could have all these ideas and tell myself, you know what, let's wait till later when he's done working, maybe this evening, write it down on a notepad. Because otherwise, if I keep interrupting him, he has to keep starting over and that takes a lot of time when you have interruptions to get back on your thought pattern where you were. I think they say it's 20, 30 minutes. So I'm like, oh, now he's getting into my time. You know what I mean? He's going to have to work later that day into the evening because I keep interrupting him. So I'm like, okay, I better just like write it down. And then I can talk about them later. Just I write it down so I can remember.
Right.
That reminds me of our week this week. Okay, Rob and I have a very eclectic mix of writing projects that we work on. So Rob is the author of joke books for children, and we also write more serious spiritual content for families. And so right now I'm in the middle of a pretty heartfelt, deep article on prayer as a mother, and he's working on knock knock jokes. And so we've been making the mistake of trying to work in the same space, and I'm like trying to dig deep, and he's like, hey, knock knock, Joanna. And I'm just like, I gotta get out of here.
Yes. She doesn't want to know if Harry works in a knock knock joke when she's trying to write a prayer, you know?
Yeah, totally feel you. And I'm hearing you too talk about structure. I think for us that was something that was maybe one of the harder things to learn, especially early in. We would come downstairs in the morning and look at each other and just be a little lost because we weren't quite sure, how are we going to delegate these tasks and how are we going to create a productive routine? And like you were describing, how do you communicate just the who's going to do what, when kind of a thing? And that added kind of a layer of stress that could potentially sabotage our sense of teamwork. So can you just dig in a little bit deeper on the how-to of working together that you've found works really well for you?
Well, the weekly meetings, I mean, help because that kind of level sets, you know, so Monday afternoons is, you know, our weekly meeting. So I usually do like Monday is kind of my free flow time typically. So I'm just whatever, free flowing, writing, doing whatever. And then in the afternoon, go out, grab my well, we used to go to a coffee shop, and then obviously after the pandemic, we couldn't go.
Right.
Now I just bring the coffee back, but I guess now we can go back to the coffee shop, right? Yeah. But anyways, so we forgot about that. Anyways, so I go get my coffee, come back, and we have our meeting, and we just have a series of topics that we address both on the personal side as well as business, and that just kind of level sets the week, number one. So you know, what are things that we didn't get done last week that we need to do this week, and what are some things this week we need to do, and then long term, what are things we need to be thinking about? So just having those weekly check-ins really helps kind of level set. And like I said, if there's things that were her mind or my mind that maybe during the week wasn't an opportune time, whatever, but we always know that there's a time and day that we can bring certain issues or talk about certain things. So the weekly meetings definitely help. And, you know, our mutual friends, Bill and Pam Farrell, they have their book, The Weekly Meetup, which we have as well. Mm-hmm. Yep. So we recommend that. All our clients, we always recommend having a weekly meeting because it's just so important to have that time to reconnect. Otherwise, everybody's just on the fly, just talking about things and throwing things at each other, right? And then that's what causes the stress and the sense of confusion because there's no time to sit there and just be intentional and have dedicated time, uninterrupted time to just talk.
Right. And so some of the things we do, we start out in prayer. I won't go through the whole schedule, but then we speak an encouraging word to each other.
Oh, that's great.
And I find that to be very important because sometimes that gets you through the whole week. If you say one heartfelt thing to each other, so that goes a long way. And then
so she always goes like, so we'll sit down. I get my coffee.
You tell all my secrets.
It's not a secret. And then as you know, right as you know the meeting's about to start, and she's got this big smile on her face.
Because I'm all excited.
And I'm like, what? She's like smiling at me. I'm like, what? Like, oh, you're waiting for your word? And she's like, yes.
That's awesome.
And then when I'm done, and I look at her and I go, okay, next.
She starts twiddling his fingers. And I'm like, what?
So it's fun. I mean, it's a fun way to start the meeting.
Yeah, that's great. That's smart.
It's a great way to start the meeting.
And then if there's something that I'm needing help with, then, you know, that's a time for him to, if there's paper I need him, like an email to read over or thought on work, then he'll help me then. And then the other thing that I think has really helped us a lot is we have calendars. We can see each other's calendars. So I can see like what's going on. Like, he's on a Zoom call right now, or he's
Oh, yeah.
writing content. So I
She
know,
knows my schedule better than I do.
Okay, that's really great.
or we're doing a podcast together. So I can look on there and see they're all synced up. I have my individual one, and then I can see his on my same Gmail. And so that has helped us tremendously as far as planning things and knowing what's going on.
Yeah, because I
With our
mean, I don't know if you guys
schedules.
use a Google Calendar, but a lot of people use Google Calendar, but we have our separate calendars, but at the same time, we can link them together, merge them together. So
That's
what's
great.
helpful sometimes, we're making appointments, like sometimes like something like this, right? We're like setting up an appointment to meet with people that we're going to do jointly. So I don't have to just talk to her. I can actually just look at my calendar and then add her calendar on it, and it'll overlay it, and then I can see where the gaps are that we can talk about. And then we also talk about days and times that maybe we kind of block off. So yeah, calendaring always is important. And so, but like I said, I think that weekly meeting helps level set everything to talk about what needs to be done. And then we can talk about how we're going to, delegate tasks and all that kind of stuff. So
Where we're at with
that's
things,
just, yeah, I mean, that in itself, I think would help. That's just a big help.
Well, the word you keep using is talking. And I think, even aside from trying to accomplish work together, a lot of times as couples, we can try to read each other's minds or assume the other person knows what our priorities are, or we can go off a lot of assumptions, and assumptions sure get you in trouble. And so I like that you're describing this constant pattern of talking and getting everything out there so you're not just guessing or winging it. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I keep telling Kaylee, I said, I'm not a mind reader, right?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, well, and it sounds like the weekly meetings, I mean, it gives you a potential to talk things through in a kind of a neutral space too, so it might eliminate some conflicts that could come up. I mean, there's always conflicts that come up, right? But it could eliminate some as you have a plan there at the beginning of the week, so you can better take in some of the conflicts and the unexpected things that do come up. So it sounds like that's really smart, and I love the idea of starting with that positive word with each other and speaking into each other's life before you start your week. So that's great.
Yeah, and then once a month, because of the way our work is structured, but once a month is a beach day, right?
Yeah.
Because Kaylee loves the beach.
Love the water.
And so we take the meeting to the beach. So we have an extended meeting, of course.
That's a good idea as well. I think we're going to move to California so we can start a beach day.
Yeah, come on out.
So we're by a big lake here in Michigan, but a big part of the year we can't we can't utilize it.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
But by also giving the encouraging word and speaking to each other's lives, that also diffuses a lot of tension and stress as well.
Hey there, friends. We'll get back to the show in just a second, but I'm excited to tell you about a wonderful marriage resource that Rob and Joanna have for you. Rob and Joanna Tigan have been married for almost 30 years and have experienced every kind of high and low in their life together. But if they had to name the biggest lesson they've ever learned as a married couple, it's that a close relationship with God helps them have a close relationship with each other. And on the flip side, if they move farther away from God, they are sure to experience a growing distance from each other too. That's why they are so passionate to help couples draw closer to God and each other every day. Rob and Joanna have created a powerful tool for you to use in your marriage. It's called Mr. and Mrs. 366 Devotions for Couples. This gorgeous book gives you an inspiring scripture, a word of teaching and encouragement, and a prayer to lift up together every day of the year. The daily topics cover every part of your life together, whether it's financial or parenting stress, conflict or communication, or the intimacy and oneness you're longing to grow between you. Now, today you may be feeling distant or discouraged. Maybe your faith has been tested by the stress of this past year, or maybe you're feeling lonely and unsupported in your relationship. It's incredible how connecting with God and each other through a daily devotional can transform your marriage and give you hope. You can find Mr. and Mrs. 366 Devotions for Couples at growinghometogether.com or wherever books are sold. Check out the link in the show notes for easy access to the book on Amazon. Now, back to the show.
So my next question for you, and this, I feel like this is a little bit of a counseling session for us because we're still kind of new into this, but your resources that you guys have offered have been a huge help. And like you said, Bill and Pam's Monday meetups and all of those are helpful tools. There's tools out there for couples who are trying to figure out life balance or work-life balance. But that's been one of our or my struggles is finding that work-life balance, because I've found that it's very easy to let sometimes we've got 5 kids, so busy life. Sometimes life can bleed in and steal the day from work, and sometimes work can extend well into the night and take away from the time I need to spend with my family. So how do you keep your work goals and your life goals as kind of a whole life together?
No, yeah.
I think part of that is during our weekly meetings, we talk about that stuff. Like, if Robert has to put in a lot of hours, say he's doing content, or we just relaunched our website not too long ago. So if he's going to put in a lot of hours, if I know that up front, then I'm like, okay, he's going to put in a lot of hours for, like, say it's a week or two. Then I can get through that. I can see the end of that because I know there's an end date coming. And I can get by in that time. It's when I don't know how long it's going to last. Like, do I want to do this forever? Him working gazillion hours? No. But if I know it's for a period of time, then that seems to like ease things inside of me to be like, okay, I can do this.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think just 2 words. It's mindset and being intentional. Mindset and intentional. I think first thing with, busy business owners, just busy professionals, period, and trying to do, all that life has to offer,
Yes.
between the business or your profession and marriage and a family. We think that our life has to be structured a certain way. I think number one, when it comes to business, you have to have the mindset is you don't have to pour every working moment into the business to make it successful. I think the first thing you need to be intentional about carving out is, what is the intentional time for God and family, God, my wife and family, or God, my spouse and family, right? And carve that out and define that. So even in we always have our clients do the 1-page family vision plan that incorporates the business as well. But how does everything work together? How does everything fit together? So the first thing you carve out is the intentional time with family, right? God and family. And then the rest of the time is the time for the business. You can grow the business. You can scale a business with whatever time you're carving out. The speed of that is going to change based on how much time you can give. But what it does is, when you know how much time to give into business, now it's going to fluctuate at times, right? Because we all have projects, and sometimes some weeks are going to be longer than others. But in general, you kind of know the ebb and flow of your business, or the expectations or demands of the business. But in general, what you got to look at is, in that time I have, how can I be a more effective and efficient in time I have? So when I come from the corporate background, we don't grow because we put more man hours into it. We grow our business because we structure the business that we scale, so we can actually become more efficient, or maybe there's tools we put in place, or bring more people or consultants into place that helps the business be able to expand and grow beyond our own capabilities. Now, too many times, because entrepreneurs are so tied to the business, or get so feel that need to be so tied to the business, is because they're kind of basically carrying the weight of everything on their shoulders, which is not how it's supposed to be, which means you already create your own limitation of how the business can grow. So you got to think about, what can I do in my period of time? How can I be more efficient with it, by bringing more tools, or having more, or outsource certain things or whatever, or and then and how do I stay in my strengths, right? Because especially when you're working by yourself, or just if it's just husband and wife, you're kind of wearing a lot of hats. So which means you're doing a lot of things that are outside your sweet spot, outside your gift. So you're spreading yourself thin. So you gotta say, where can I just spend most of my time in? And what do I do with the other stuff that's not in my sweet spot? What am I going to do with that? Is that maybe where my spouse comes in? Or do I outsource that? Or is it things that I just don't do for now? Or is there a piece of software that makes what I do more efficient? Things like that. You just gotta get more creative and innovative to how you become more efficient with what you have, with the time that you have.
Yeah.
So number one, the mindset is, you don't have to be married to the business for it to be successful. You can prioritize faith and family and still have your business grow beyond your wildest imagination. It just takes a little bit more creativity on the business side. It's not about take the weight off your shoulder of saying, I got to do this, but say, how do I do this? How do I do it better? And who else do I need to bring into the conversation to make this business grow?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if I answered that question.
No, that
Because
was
a lot of times our spouses are opposite. They have opposite giftings. And a lot of times we want to put them in a place just because we need, like you said earlier, a warm spot, as opposed to that's their gifting where they shine and they do a great job and they love doing something like that. So
yeah.
it takes it off your plate.
Yeah, no, that answers it great, because I think that is a key, is realizing, discovering your strengths, but also realizing your partner's strength, and also how oftentimes, and I think this has been a huge learning curve for Joanna and I. When we first stepped out on our own in the business side too, we got some life coaching, and that was a big part of business/life coaching. But that was a big part of what we walked through was, where were we spending our time? And both Joanna and I were spending, chunks of time that we shouldn't have been because we weren't focusing on our strengths. And and I know sometimes I think that's part of the conflict too, is realizing Joanna's always wanted to be a writer, and I've always wanted to create. I'm not as much of the lover of the sitting down and sitting still and writing, but I realize that if she didn't have that focus, even when I want to run off with my ideas, we probably would never actually get one of those books to get published. We would be working on 12 different ideas that would never get done. And so, it's been a process, but I think that's true in married life, or if you're also doing business together, to recognize that oftentimes when you run up against something that might annoy you about your spouse, that's the very thing you need in your life to make you stronger. And so I think you brought a lot of great just practical ideas for us there.
Good.
Yeah. And, I mean, we're talking a lot about business and ministry because that's your experience and our experience. But, I mean, every couple is pursuing a goal or having to tackle a task, or, it takes teamwork to parent. It takes teamwork to get the landscaping done. It takes teamwork to walk out the budget, all those things. And from talking to the families around us, it seems like everybody that you talk to, if you ask how they're doing, they're all saying that they're exhausted. And it isn't because that they're running a business together. It's just that life right now has been really, really hard. And there's a lot of burnout. I mean, you've got these couples who both have been spending actually a lot of time together because their companies send them to work from home or whatever, but they're trying to help their kids learn online and all these kind of things. And so I think for a lot of couples, they're coming toward each other, trying to create teamwork, but they're both so incredibly depleted. So what would you say would be one step they could take even in that state to kind of support and build up their partner?
You're talking about all the busyness people are under and they're kind of, almost at the point of burnout, right? And so, as far as how to deal with those things, first is pause. I think we feel like that we have to just keep going and going and going. The number one thing is you got to pause and maybe start to reprioritize some things and maybe look at, so, whether it's business or what, we always talk to our business owners is we have a focus plan, 1-page focus plan. We have them do list all the activities that you're doing, right? On a day-to-day basis, week-to-week basis. And what are the 1 to 3 things that are in your sweet spot, right? And put that in the bucket of these are priorities. And then all the other stuff, what do you do with the other stuff? Are there things that you need to scale back on? Like sometimes there's volunteer issues, working with the church or helping out neighbors or something. There's all these other extracurricular activities that we're all usually involved in that falls outside of our family life. But we got to look at how do we start to reprioritize some things, and what are some things that we maybe need to put a pause on? What are some things we probably need to cut out for good? And then how do we do this better? So until you pause in your life a little bit and look at some things and start to prioritize things, and I think be able to say no to things.
Yeah.
I think too many times we're saying yes to too many things, and next thing you know, your calendar's booked, which means when that happens, you just know inherently that your personal, your marriage, and your family time is getting squeezed. right? The more things you say yes to, that means the more time your family time is getting squeezed.
Mhm.
So you got to pause and start to look at things and start to reprioritize, what you're doing, and should you be doing some of these.
And I think too, as a couple, you need to ask each other, what fills you up? Is it going for a walk? Is it exercising? Is it
Yeah.
writing? And then between the two of you, try and schedule in that time so that your partner can do those things that fill them up,
Yeah.
that fills up their tanks. They're not feeling exhausted. Maybe she just needs, take a shower without any kids, in the bathroom with
Right.
her, or, sometimes it's smaller things than you think, but if you can be intentional with your spouse about trying to carve out that time so they can have some one-on-one time, if that's what it is that they need, I think that goes a long ways as well, because there's so much, everybody's together now in this season and they're trying to figure things out, and it's a little overwhelming. So I think sometimes having a little me time.
Yeah. And that pause when you talk about those things, because, we all get filled, like Kaylee and I, we get filled up in different ways, right? We're different people. So what re-energize us are different. And so there's things we can do as a couple that energize us, but there's also things we need to do probably separately as well. So you need to have those kind of conversations, because our tank gets filled in different ways. And so you need to be able to appreciate that and sometimes look out for each other with that, right? We have one client where the wife is definitely looking out because husband's close to burnout, and he's admitted that. And he just struggles with taking personal time because he feels guilty, because in the past, he says, before when he was a selfish husband, he was always out, getting on his motorbikes or whatever and doing stuff. And so he wasn't a good husband. He wasn't a good father. And now he's kind of reverted to almost the complete opposite end of the spectrum. But now he's not even taking time for himself where he should be, right?
Yeah.
So we're saying, hey, don't feel guilty about it. You still need personal time. And his wife's all for it. And so sometimes you also, as a spouse, you need to look out for your spouse as far as, are you taking the time you need to fill your tank back up?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that really makes me think about what we feel like is God's primary lesson for us in 2021 so far is the value of rest. I mean, God calls us very clearly to work and to serve him and to love others, but there's so much in Scripture that calls us away and calls us into rest. And we find that isn't...
One of the 10 Commandments is rest, Sabbath, obey the Sabbath.
Right. And it isn't something that comes very naturally to us, and that's what God's really been challenging us about. And we would say that the one thing that has kept us anchored through our life together is our faith in God. When we feel stuck or discouraged, we can pray. The Bible puts out an awesome roadmap to just how to love each other well. And we would love it if you could describe how your faith makes an impact on your teamwork as a couple.
Well, I mean, it's central. I mean, every morning we start with prayer. And these days, I have my prayer chair. And so I get in there, first thing in the morning. She gets up before me now, but I come in the living room. I got my little blanket. The dog's on Kaylee's lap. As soon as I walk in, the dog jumps up to get on my lap. So she selects me. I grab my Bible, I read, and I pray. And then sometimes I doze off. But I start with prayer. But then afterwards, then we have our prayer time, right? So we start our day with prayer, and just it's a good time to kind of connect and start the day. And so lately, it's been Kaylee jumps in the prayer chair with me, and it's not a two-seater, by the way. It's just a one-seater. She wedges herself in there. She pulls my blanket open, and then kind of knocks the dog off a little bit, just knocks her off balance a little bit. Kaylee wedges herself in the chair, puts the blanket over her. Then the dog gets all riled up. It has to lick everybody. And then we all settle down. The dog's laying down on us. Then we pray. So that's the visual, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
probably more than they wanted to know.
No, that's great.
But it's a fun way to start the day, and of course we start with prayer. And so it's fundamental to everything we do, and we try to be just discerning through the day. It's not just that intentional time of prayer, but also just be discerning throughout the day. So we're always praying to God just for wisdom and discernment just through the day. that we don't always have to get answers just when we're praying and hopefully having quiet time, because sometimes people pray but they don't have quiet time. So I
Yeah.
always ask people, like, if you don't stop and listen, how are you going to hear? It's like if
That's good.
you're just praying and asking and then you're amen and you're gone, well, how do you expect an answer, by the way? But
Mm.
anyways, but also through the day you can receive answers just through the everyday circumstance of what's going on, just by gentle nudging, things that you see, a phone call you get. I mean, opportunistic. I mean, there's so many things, but we're always praying for discernment about how he's speaking and how he's leading us. And so, starting the day with that prayer, and then just really committing the day to him, and give us that gift, this discernment of as he's speaking, as he's showing us stuff, that we can recognize that. And so it's so important, because there's sometimes, I mean, this is actually, like I said, I'm a, marketing, my experiences in marketing and sales, but, early on in our business, when I was doing it full time, it started off well, and then all of a sudden started to peter out. And I was doing everything I knew marketing wise to get things going, and literally nothing was working. I was getting no responses from some of the marketing. So I finally, just in my prayer chair, I just sat. I go, okay, Lord, I'm obviously missing something here. And so I said, what are you doing that I'm not seeing? And what are my steps here, marking, for the business? And so I just sat there and was quiet. And then I just sensed the Lord just saying, go deeper. And so what that meant was, in marketing, a lot of times in marketing, people's ideas of marketing is spread a wide net. You
Mm-hmm.
hear this a lot of times, spread a wide net, right? So you're going wide. Well, the Lord's, and we forget about deep. About, so you're trying to cast a wide net to develop some relationships, but we fail to sometimes go deep in those relationships. And that's when sales happens, is when the relationships get deeper. And so the Lord was reminding me, I've got my net doesn't need to be wider. I just need to go deeper in the relationships I already have. And so once I did that, that changed everything. So again, it goes back to the prayer time, but also the time to be quiet. And sometimes asking the right questions, like, okay, what are you doing? That I'm obviously missing something here. So what's going on? And so sometimes, the Lord still gave some very sound marketing advice. It just, at the time, it wasn't what I was doing, right? So sometimes we're so busy doing what we think we know how, what we think, even when you're trained in a certain profession or skill set, but even then you can still miss the boat, right? So the Lord just showed me, from a marketing perspective, where I should be focusing my time.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's awesome.
That was an example.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, yeah, I think the thing that came to me throughout this is, listening is a good lesson, whether you're talking about with your spouse or with God. More listening and less talking sometimes is helpful to help with the teamwork and to hear what God's telling us to do. So, kind of on that note, with prayer, I'm wondering if one of you would be willing to pray for the couples that are listening today that want to grow in their teamwork and their marriage, whether they're, just in life or life and business together as well. But they just want that teamwork and to put God first. So would one of you be willing to pray for that?
Sure. You want to start, honey? No.
Yes, dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for all the families, all the couples, Lord. I pray for energy and strength, Lord, and health over all them, Lord, and that you will reunite the families, Lord, as one unit, and you will show them how that they can all work together, going in the same direction in their individual giftings, Lord.
Yes, Lord, we just thank you for Rob and Joanna,
Yes.
and the friendship that we've developed, and we just pray blessing and favor over what they're doing, their business, their ministry, and all the things that you've put into their lap to steward, Lord. And so we just pray for just the multiplication of what they're doing, but also their efforts and their time and their ability to love one another and their family, and just for that to be spread and imparted to their audience, Lord, because they have such a huge heart. So we pray for a multiplication of their heart, Lord, so that it can impact the thousands and the millions more that need to hear their message and what they have. And we just pray over their audience right now. Lord, you just know all the situations that are going on with the couples that are listening now. And we just pray for just wisdom and guidance and clarity and focus. So Lord, as we just pray that they are able to see clearly what you have in store for them in the present and even long term, and the ability to focus on the things that are most important for their faith in you, Lord, and also for their families. And I just know if it's whether it's their business or their profession or the ministry, that those will be the beneficiaries of the priority they give to you, Lord, and to each other and their families. So we just pray just a kind of a shift of the mindset of where the return comes from is not so much of what you put into the business or the ministry or the career, but it's what you put into God and family, Lord. And from that, the outflow of that will be a return on the professional side. So we just thank you that just kind of impart that to everyone and just really have this mind shift to see that they won't be doing their profession a disservice when they focus on what the priorities should be: faith, family, and then finance. Yes. So we just thank you for that and give you all these prayers in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you for that. You know, you've given us so much insight and encouragement today, and I know that our listeners are going to want to learn more from you and discover everything you have to offer at Power Couples by Design. So how can everybody find you online, and what kind of resources will they find there?
Well, first, we want to recommend a great resource. That's not ours.
Conversation starters for husbands and wives. No, we out on the patio, because the weather's been nice. We get these cards out. We ask questions. We went on a date, I don't know, a couple weeks ago.
We went on a little mini vacation,
and retreat. We took these to the restaurant with us. And I love them. I'm learning all this new things about my husband that I never knew. So thank you.
That's awesome. We don't have it where guests come on very often and plug our stuff for us. So thank you for that. That's awesome.
With a new set soon, because eventually I'm going to get through these, so I'm going to need new questions.
Yeah, we have new questions coming out later this year, and we'll make sure to send you a set.
I gotta get the joke cards.
Yeah, do you have joke cards?
Okay.
I don't. I should come up with some though.
You know what? We have a joke calendar. We'll send you those, and you get a joke every day.
No, they're great. No, those are great. So we definitely highly recommend it. We're users.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, you can go to our website and pretty much get everything. But powercouplesbydesign.com, powercouplesbydesign.com. So our podcast is on there. You can also find it on our, all the podcast players. We just relaunched or rebranded the podcast. It's now called Power Up Your Marriage and Business. So if you're looking for it on Spotify or whatever podcast player, that's where you'd find it on. Or just go to our website and the podcasts are there. As well as this doesn't come out to June though, as well as our courses of the free resources, the videos. We do weekly videos, and sometimes people follow us, not just to follow us what we have to say, but follow where we're going, where we are or were. Because we'll do wherever we are, whether we did a road trip in November to Sioux Falls to visit clients. So instead of flying to Sioux Falls and back, we decided to do a road trip and see parts of the United States we've never seen. So we shot videos on our way. But anyways, it kind of documents a little bit of our life, as well as hopefully some marriage tips along the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you go to our website, it's got everything, or you can follow us on social as well. Power Couples by Design on Facebook and Instagram. And I think that's it. So yeah, we got different free resources on there and paid resources on our website. So
yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, your resources are great for a couple that are trying to do life and business together. But I would say that a lot of those resources you have on there are just great for any married couple, a relationship of understanding personality things, understanding each other, like you said, elevating each other's strengths. There's just so many great resources on your website. So I encourage you.
Because a lot of stuff I totally agree. Because lots like the event we're doing at the end of this month is specifically just on marriages, even though we're targeting entrepreneur couples, trying to get them to reconnect, the busy entrepreneur couples, how do you reconnect? But obviously it's not isolated to entrepreneurs, because it's just marriage lessons. Period.
Yeah.
So yeah, when it comes to marriage, it's definitely for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. So thanks so much for joining us today, Robert and Kay Lee. We really appreciate it. And thank you, friends, for joining us today on the Growing Home Together podcast. We would love to connect with you as well on our website, growinghometogether.com, where we have all kinds of resources to help you grow closer to God and each other. Stop by and download our free marriage devotional called Rekindled. plus some other fun activities to share with kids, and growing home together. We've got those cards on there too, so if you're interested in those. But at Growing Home Together, we're caring for the soul of your family.
And we're growing home together with you. Bye-bye.
Bye.